Introducing Punchbowl News. From Anna Palmer, Jake Sherman, and John Bresnahan. News about the people who matter, for the people who matter. Join the community at punchbowl.news.
All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm Anna Palmer, a founder of Punchbowl News and CEO, joined by another founder, Jake Sherman. Thank you all so much for joining us on the live stream as well in person for our first in-person event. We're very excited about that. A big thank you to Goldman Sachs, 10,000 Voices, for partnering with us on this Road to Recovery series with our first event that is going to be centered on access to capital.
This morning, we'll welcome Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia to the stage to talk about news of the day in what's an amazingly busy news environment. We'll talk about access to capital and the impact COVID-19 is having on the economic recovery, particularly for small businesses, and the role that government can play to help in the recovery.
Afterward, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon is going to join us for a fireside chat. As always, we'd like to encourage you to share on social media. During these events, you can find us on @Punchbowl News on all social media platforms. And with that, let's welcome the senator to the stage. Senator, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
So, Senator, thanks so much for joining us. You were a successful governor of I would say a purple state then, probably now.
It was a reddish state when I got elected.
Right.
In 2001.
It's
right.
changed.
I think you've talked about over the years about how the Senate's not working, which it probably is now. I think more than ever before. Is that the right impression that we're getting? Is that all the things that we're getting frustrated with and you're getting frustrated with at times is actually the Senate working as you kind of thought it would always do?
Well, you know what? I think if we take a step back and look at how not just the Senate but the Congress responded to COVID, we may have overdone in a number of areas, but there were literally 4 bills that put north of $4 trillion into the economy that all passed with north of 90 votes in the Senate. And then if you go to the American Rescue Plan, which was equally ambitious, again, only one team, but it was dramatic. Now, we are, in the midst now on infrastructure, and I like to point out the infrastructure bill that we're considering at $579 billion is literally double where President Biden and the first Republican group were. So I think it's substantial, but obviously the two-step of how we try to get one bill done and then potentially move to a series of the Build Back Better in terms of families, that's a complicated process. I thought we would be done by now on the first. Now I've gone. I will indicate, for those of you who want to follow, I have been demonstrating the progress. Last week I said we were this far apart, then we were this far apart. Last night we're this far apart.
Are we
now,
still there?
We are. Let the record show it's infinite. Everybody's operating in good faith. In many ways, we've kind of, you can't do a full-on deal with 10 people in the room. So Steve Ricchetti from the White House, Rob Portman from the Republican side, I can assure you they were, my check-in calls with everybody last night at about 11 o'clock. People were still in the midst of things. But I am totally with your frustration. I'm totally with my colleagues' frustration because until it's done, outlining all the component parts and then particularly some of the questions around pay-fors, you got to have it done before you can fully explain it. And I particularly am very sympathetic on the Democratic side with people wanting more information, more data. This does not, time is not on this deal's side, so we got to get it done.
So, first question fast. Are we going to be working this weekend? Is the Senate going to be in?
I think the Senate will be in because I presume once it is done, Leader Schumer's going to want to move immediately to move this forward, and then we're just going to have to kind of pull our way through. So for my friends in the press, I would cancel your weekend plans and also cancel all of your dinner plans for the next for the foreseeable future, frankly.
Lovely.
Man.
Just want to cheer you up, early in the morning here.
I'll tell my wife that. She'll be pleased.
But can you just one more question on this, and then we will move to the question of the day. But do you agree with Joe Manchin that if this falls apart, and you seem pretty bullish that it's not going to, but do you agree that it would be difficult to proceed with that larger human infrastructure package?
I know that as somebody who was intimately involved in getting the budget committee or the budget Democrats to a $3.5 trillion number, that was a huge stretch for me. I can assure you I had many of my Democratic colleagues are saying, Warner, why didn't we do more on this and that and the other? I can also tell you I had a lot of my Democratic colleagues saying, Warner, how in the hell did you get to? So I think we are at the high water mark, and without an infrastructure deal, everything gets exponentially harder. And and if you step back and you look at the scope and breadth, I'm not sure anybody has pulled off this much scope or breadth, at least in the time that I've been in the Senate.
Yeah.
There have been one-off deals. I mean, the infrastructure deal alone, if it was a standalone, when you look at historic investments in roads, if you look at historic investments in water, if you actually, and I think Joe Manchin doesn't get enough credit on this, there's close to $100 billion in cleaner energy things, smart grid, electric vehicle infrastructure, capping orphan wells, that any of that on its own would be a good year's work, let alone the $65 billion in broadband. But we are in heady times. I remember when a couple $100 billion here or there were actually real money.
Yeah. Yep. Let's turn to the issue of the day, access to capital, something you've talked a ton about. This morning, Goldman Sachs, 10,000 businesses in the Bipartisan Policy Center, released a new report with some pretty stark numbers. I'll read them out for you. 2/3 of small businesses remain concerned about the impact of COVID-19 on their businesses. 82% of respondents said their Paycheck Protection Program funds would run out by the end of the month. Those are pretty stark numbers. I mean, how do you react to that? What more can the government do or should do here?
Jay, great question. I've been so kind of all in on this current negotiation. I had a couple guys come down from New York yesterday, and their first question was not infrastructure or tax reform. It was like, okay, when are you guys going to do another COVID package? And that's frankly not much on our radar screens. But, I've gone from, hugging people a week ago Monday to middle of masks from most of the press corps end of last week to this week, my own mask. I think we are in uncharted waters. There is not, we know the restaurant program has been oversubscribed. We know PPP has been very successful at $800 billion out, but no one has been giving active thought to another COVID relief package. And let me just, one comment on all this. I've tried to be respectful of people as they make their personal choices, but I think the majority of us who have gotten the vaccine, that our patience is running thin with those individuals who choose not to get a vaccine. They've got that choice. But on that choice, there ought to be then the responsibility, they ought to stay home. But the idea that they are going to continue to go out with the Delta variant spiking through and putting people at risk is beyond selfish. And I fear the schism that could take place in this country, particularly as we go back into mask mandates, particularly as businesses, go back into working at home. This may be a friction point that I hope we can all take a deep breath, and I hope those who've been reluctant to advocate for science will make those appeals, because I could see this frustration level bubbling over because I think we've all fought so hard. We've gone through 17 months of the most extraordinary periods in our life. And the idea that we're suddenly, and businesses are, I think a number of businesses you may see in the next few days will go back to kind of all working from home. I hope the FDA goes ahead and makes the final guarantee so that excuse is gotten rid of. But let's face it, this vaccine, what? 3 billion people, 2 billion people have already received it. We have more data on this vaccine than virtually any other vaccine that any of us has taken. And I just think the irresponsibility of not doing your part, if you don't care about yourself, you do owe some obligation to your friends, neighbors, and others.
I want to ask you, you've spent a lot of time on the concept of, helping out and figuring out minority-owned businesses, the uneven recovery. You and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell discussed this recently when kind of back and forth on this issue of communities of color being disproportionately impacted. You and other lawmakers have been pushing investment into minority depository institutions, into community development financial institutions. Do you think, you pushed him on this, but do you think the Fed's doing enough?
Well, let's step back again. The one thing we know, COVID didn't hit everybody equally. It disproportionately hit communities of color, not just on a health basis, but on a financial basis. Many black-owned, brown-owned businesses didn't start by getting a family member giving them seed capital, them going to a bank and borrowing money. They kind of bootstrapped their businesses, many of them being sole proprietorships, and consequently their traditional banking relationships were not as strong. So in the first couple of rounds of PPP, they were not first in line. And I'm going to give people like Ben Cardin a great deal of credit on the Small Business Committee for saying, hey, we need to try to rectify that in second rounds. And I think that was helpful. But if you look at the destruction, 440,000 black-owned businesses last year went out of business. You've taken almost a generation of wealth creation off the table, and we already have a wealth gap that is 10-to-1 white families over black families. And in an America that is getting, more and more diverse, this is not just some kind of good guyism. Unless we have full participation of everyone across our society in the economic mix, then we're not going to have the kind of country that we want to value. And so what in the December bill, one of the things I fought really hard for, and it was one of the few new initiatives that got in, were $12 billion that would go into either black-owned banks or community development financial institutions. The challenge is, number of black-owned banks in this country gone down to roughly 24, 25. Most of them got washed out after the financial crisis of 2008. Community development financial institutions, CDFIs, which are really pretty small piece of the financial market, a couple thousand of them out there, they by definition have to lend 60% into low and moderate income communities. So with the $12 billion, we said, let's do something really bold. Let's put some grant money out. But let's not just do something short term about how we deal with the crisis. Let's actually take a model of what happened for the larger institutions after the 2008 crisis and actually inject what's called Tier 1 equity capital into these institutions. And you end up being my biggest advocates, or some of my biggest advocates, was Steven Mnuchin, Trump's Treasury Secretary, Mike Crapo. It was a broadly based bipartisan, because that $9 billion that could go into the CDFIs, that can be levered 10-to-1. So you're talking about basically a $90 billion of additional capacity. You are almost increasing the capacity of these institutions by 50%. Number one, really significant. Number two, there are a lot of the large, I know David's going to come up later, the SIFI institutions, all of them are trying to do something. I'm anxious, he will talk about his 10,000 businesses. We need to support these efforts by the large institutions, but we need to measure them too and hold them accountable. I worry sometimes in your publication, some of the others, everybody's talking about what they're doing, but we have no system to actually see, is it actually happening? And I hear from a whole host of community banks in my state that want to, lean into lending into these disadvantaged communities. But candidly, there is no kind of regulatory forbearance. So one of the things I've said with Jay Powell, and they did open, I don't want to nerd out too much on this, but they did open a Fed facility for non-depository institutions during this period. And I can go into more detail than you want on that. And so there was some recognition. I think the Fed can do more. I think all the regulators can do more. I think there is a lot. We've also read, so how do you give more incentive to the large, but also to the regionals and the smalls to lean into this community? And then there is what has been happening with kind of business writ large. I think we all saw what Netflix said they want to put $100 million into depositories in minority institutions. There's a moment in time, post-COVID, post-George Floyd, when we have those long overdue conversations about wealth gaps in this country, where even large enterprises want to do something. But if we miss this moment, and what we've not had is a comprehensive, here's where everybody can play on how we can address this issue. I've been encouraging the administration to think much bolder. My CDFI MDI program is roughly $100 billion. I've got an initiative for first-generation home buyers that can create the ability to kind of, if they can afford a 30-year mortgage, create a 20-year mortgage. So they earn equity at a 2-to-1 rate. Yeah. There are a series of programs. I think it is time for the administration, in conjunction with the banking industry and the private sector, not to think small, but to say we ought to have a public-private $1 trillion initiative to try over the next few years to narrow the wealth gap in this country and continue to make sure that, particularly entrepreneurs of color get the same kind of access to capital that I had. I got to tell you, I failed my first 2 businesses. Third time I hit cell phones and eked out a living. But I am under no illusion that if I had not been a white guy with the appropriate education, I wouldn't have gotten maybe a 3rd shot or a 2nd shot or even a 1st shot. And that need in a country that is now, in Commonwealth of Virginia, we're about 35% people of color. If those folks are not getting the same fair shot, Virginia's economy is not going to be able to fully prosper. So we ought to not just do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the only way. I guess that first coffee has kicked in already. So, it's the only way, though, that we're going to make sure we maintain the kind of economic prosperity that will really make this country.
I'm going to remind you of those long answers in the hallway in the Capitol today, but let me ask you. Let me combine 2 things you said. So you mentioned the idea of a second, I guess it would be a 5th COVID package. The initiatives you're talking, combine those 2 things. Is there going to be another COVID package? Should there be, in your estimation, based on what you're hearing from businesses small and large? And given all of the priorities that you just laid out, it seems like that would be a natural fit for those priorities.
So, Jake, you'd rather ask that than have me go through CRA regulations on how we can...
Well,
no, I think one of the things that we've seen, I do still think there are a number of sole proprietorships. I think, some of the minority businesses have done better the last couple of rounds, and we've done these other programs. We've done, the restaurants program. We've done the shuttered venues, but there are still wide groups of industries that are still reeling because they got no relief. I'm going to give you an example. One that I'm surprised that every senator hasn't co-sponsored with me. It's bipartisan. They got 4. Minor league baseball. Teams that are not owned by the major league teams got Zippo. They didn't qualify even in shuttered venues. You talk about something that is, that every elected official, could show their, support. So minor league sports, a lot of these teams, if they fold, they will not come back. So we've got an initiative to try to help, on a relatively minor basis, about $500 million. There are a series of subsets that have not had any help. I think their ability to get that assistance, if we had, if we were making the same progress we were making 3 weeks ago, might have been relatively small. But unfortunately, because I think we are seeing, if this Delta variant spikes a little more and we see businesses go into shutdown mode again, I think we are going to have to assess the need to do some other package. Yeah. But it has not been put together. It is not, there are individual voices, but there's not an organized effort.
Do you think that could happen before the end of the year?
I think it would, on a lot of these, it has to. The thing that would be such a shame is that we have done so much, put out so much capital, frankly, kept a whole host of businesses alive, and we've not seen the economic decline that we thought. If now at the, if we're, whatever analogy you want to use, if we're on the 5-yard line.
Please no, please no.
It would be potentially a mistake if suddenly we lost a host of businesses because we wouldn't do some smaller incremental round. Although I would also say one of the areas that in March we probably overshot the bounds a little bit was money to state and localities. And I really do think it is incumbent on these state and localities who have these one-time funds. There may be state programs to help some of these businesses, and there is clearly, and I want to applaud my Governor Northam, who's taken about $500 million of his ARP money plus $200 billion that we put up on broadband money, and has made a major commitment on broadband. Any governor or mayor that does not take some of those March dollars and put a substantial chunk into broadband, I think is being incredibly irresponsible.
We've seen actually Mayor of Oklahoma City, we wrote about, took some of that money, put it to different small business programs that didn't qualify, some of the things you were talking about. So people have been creative there.
Yeah. We are quickly running out of time, but you did mention the governor of your state, and we wanted you to put on your politics hat very quickly. Handicap Terry McAuliffe trying to get your old job back. That race, do you think he's going to beat Republican Glenn Youngkin?
The once and future governor.
All right. Newsflash. McAuliffe wins. Now, Terry, listen, Terry, the thing that Terry can bring, and as I reminded, Terry and the governor the other day, Virginia reclaimed the title of best state for business, something it held when the 69th governor was there. But the idea that, his opponent is somehow saying, well, I'm only running because, Virginia's been run into the ditch. I just don't think it flies on any independent valuation, whether the CNBC, Best for Business, whether the kind of status of our higher ed system, which I think is still best in the nation on public higher ed. We still have some economic challenges in South Side and Southwest, but are you going to hire somebody who actually knows how to get the job done and has a record of bipartisanship, or someone who, espouses his support for Donald Trump, and frankly, during the primary, brought Ted Cruz into the state to campaign for him? I'm not sure that's where Virginians are headed.
And Senate 2022, handicap that quickly now before your staff whisks you out off the stage.
I actually think if you look at the map, Democrats are in good shape, but I don't think there's ever been a time when predicting electoral outcomes 15 months from now is more meaningless than right now. I mean, if you look, the economy still, on the market-wise, doing fine. But Americans' confidence level, kind of optimism about the future, has dropped 20 points since May. And, I think the president is still doing well, but this 20 points since May, I think people are exhausted around COVID. I think there is this concern about the variant coming back. I think, we have been promising that any day, and I hope today, we show that we can do something on the bipartisan infrastructure plan. But there is a heck of a lot of uncertainty, and luckily we've got great guys like you to figure it out and help make those predictions.
I'm out of the prediction business.
Exactly. All right, well, Senator, thank you so much for your time.
Senator.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate it, Senator. Thank you.
Step off this way.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, and now we're going to welcome David Solomon to the stage, CEO of Goldman Sachs. David, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
How are you?
All right, well, we have a ton to cover. I want you to set the table, though, for a little bit. For those who are in the audience, Goldman Sachs has had 10,000 small businesses since 2009, but Voices started in the last year plus. What is this effort about? You kind of heard the senator talk about the role that banks and other companies are playing in these kind of really important issues on access to capital.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, and nice to be here with you and with everybody here in the room. We came to 10,000 small businesses, over a decade ago, and it was really rooted in a desire to use some of the resources that we had to advance small businesses across the country. And we're a big believer that small businesses have been, will continue to be one of the most important engines for economic vitality, job growth, progress broadly. But for a lot of small businesses, and you heard the senator, there are a range of issues that really inhibit their ability to move forward with the pace that they'd like to. Most small businesses bootstrap up their businesses. They come at it with a small amount of capital and a whole lot of energy and enthusiasm. And we really saw an opportunity to use some of the resources that we had, first and foremost, just business expertise. And the program was really thought through the lens of, can we use resources we have to help people expand the development of their business? Can we teach them about business planning? Can we teach them about budgeting? Can we teach them about investment? Can we teach them hiring practices? Can we teach a bunch of things that we've learned, given our experience in business, to help them really accelerate their businesses? And so we started off on that journey, and we made a commitment to bring 10,000 businesses through the program. And we saw, as we executed on that, and this really goes back over a decade ago, that as these businesses would come through the program, they would increase their hiring. They would broaden their business. They'd open another manufacturing line. They'd take some risk. They had the tools and the resources to start to drive the expansion of their businesses more quickly. And so from that success, we continued to build on the program. We've now taken more than 10,000 businesses through the program. We just committed in the last year another $250 million to take another 10,000 businesses through the program. But as we had this reservoir of data and information, and one of the things I think the senator said that I really agree with, we have to hold ourselves accountable for looking at the data and saying, what can we learn, what's working, what's not, and how can we therefore advance it? And so we really saw, information in that helped us therefore advance the program. And one of the things we saw, or that we took away from our experience as we talked to small business owners, and this was really amplified in the crisis during COVID, is they didn't have a voice here in Washington to lobby for their needs. And that's why we created 10,000 Small Businesses Voices, to try to bring together thousands of these business owners and give them access to people on the Hill, so that our legislators could hear directly, from those small business owners what they need, what their experience is. And the initial feedback on that has really been terrific. And so that program is off and running, and I think we're very, very proud of it. So one of the things we try to do is learn through those experiences and see how we can continue to use our resources, our intellectual capital, our actual capital, to help advance this cause.
One of the things that Senator Warner talked about, which was really interesting, and you guys have a data point on this as well, is minority access to capital, and how COVID basically, in some respects, wiped out a generation of minority wealth. And you guys, in your survey, said that black-owned businesses that are low credit risk are half as likely as white-owned firms to receive money they request. So talk about what the private sector should do, but also, what Senator Warner and what Congress should be doing to ease some of that and to make it easier.
Absolutely. This is a real issue, and it's a complex issue. We've been very focused, and this is something we've learned over the last decade, on the benefit that CDFIs and mission-driven lenders can have and really succeeding to get capital into small businesses. So the first thing we have to do is we have to strengthen those platforms. And that strengthening can come candidly from legislators providing more resources into CDFIs. It can come from private sector sources like Goldman Sachs providing more resources into CDFIs. One of the things we did during COVID, early in COVID, is we made a $25 million grant into CDFIs to help them advance technology and platforms that they have so they can be more effective in doing the things that they need to do. They need help, with resources to better connect. But we also saw during the crisis that the feedback on CDFIs and their ability to actually deploy PPP capital, once we got that set up, as Senator Warner said, it was Cardin who really said we've got to find a better way. Once we did better in the second and third round, the feedback on how CDFIs were doing in deploying that capital was improved. But we've got to get more resources to CDFIs. And I think we also have to understand that small businesses need risk capital. And risk capital is complicated. It's not risk capital is not lending capital. Risk capital is risk capital. We've got to give people the tools so they can be successful with SBA loans. I think one of the things that's really surprising to me, looking at data I looked at recently, is almost half of small business owners don't believe that they would qualify today for an SBA loan given the impact of COVID on their business. Now, whether that's right or wrong, the fact that they lack that confidence has an impact on what they do. So there's a lot of work to do in this area. I think I think from a policy perspective we can do more, and I think candidly the private sector can do more. And one of the things I'm encouraged by is I see a lot of private sector actors trying to find ways to support this, because it's irrefutable that small businesses play an enormous role in our economic vitality.
Could I follow up on that for 1 second? So Senator Warner said he's been hearing a lot about another COVID package in which, for him, this would clearly be a priority. How do you view that kind of climate given access to capital, small businesses, and COVID?
Well, I think we have to watch what's happening. I'm disappointed that we've not been as successful as I think we should be at this point in time with vaccine distribution broadly across the country.
Yep.
And that's why we're in the position where we have the issues that we have right now with Delta variant. And there is a risk. It hasn't been that significant yet, the additional economic impact of different policies to make sure people are safe, of different, of affecting, economic activity yet, but there's a risk it's going to. And if it did, then we absolutely, might need to do more to deal with that. So we should watch that very closely. But the biggest thing we can do right now is to do everything we can to encourage people to get vaccinated. One of the things that's so interesting to me, we have lots of tough problems here in Washington that need to be wrestled with. I think about, for example, the relationship between the United States and China and how complex those issues are. Here we have something where the solution is clear and easy. Get vaccinated. We have the resources. Get vaccinated. It's safe, and it helps us move forward economically as a society. So we have to continue to make progress.
Senator talked a lot about infrastructure, obviously the biggest thing moving in town right now. I wanted to talk about, at the risk of getting a little too wonky, about procurement reform. I know this is an issue that small businesses have been really struggling with in terms of actually getting into getting procurement and the process. What things would you like to see changed? Is that something that's on your radar?
It's something that there are people at Goldman Sachs thinking about quite a bit. It's an issue. It's a little wonky for my level of preparation today.
Sorry, you're in Washington. We had to bring you, into the weeds a little bit.
But look, this is we have to create both policies and then tools. Right. So the policies have to set up to give more small businesses the opportunity to win. Then we've got to give small businesses the tools. We've got to give them expertise. We've got to give them resources. And that's what we're trying to do through our 10,000 small business program. So we're constantly looking for ways with our resources and our position we can add at a granular level to make people more successful. I think, and this is an example. We can teach people to be better at this stuff. But you've got to take the time to teach. I think one of the things that I learned early on in mentoring some 10,000 small business owners going back 10 years now. And I've always enjoyed that experience of being able to work with some of these small business owners and then to forge a relationship that's lasted with a number of them. To me, budgeting and planning is just so intuitive in everything I think about in running a very, very large business. But for most people running a small business, they don't think about it. They don't think about the benefit of actually making a plan. They just go. They're an entrepreneur and they're just going.
You're talking to two small business owners who wrestled with this themselves. I mean, we started a business. We didn't know that.
It's a great discipline because all of us are limited on our resources, and it forces you. If you actually sit down and budget and plan, you have to make choices. And if you make choices and you think about them, you'll make better choices, and you'll be better with scant resources than you will be if you run without that formality. And so one of the pieces of feedback I get from small businesses all the time was, it was great that you taught me how to do that. I didn't think about it. And here's how it's really helped me. I made this choice instead of that choice. And that's led to allowing me to hire 3 more people and therefore expand my business more quickly.
I bet you find a lot that you are giving advice that is like not even second nature to you, but so ingrained in your brain that you're just like, you don't even know that people don't know it. I would imagine that happens all the time.
There's a lot that's in my brain, but it comes from 40 years. I'm very lucky. I've been working for 40 years. If you went back and I started a business when I was younger and I was 3 years into it, there'd be 37 years less experience,
right.
probably, in that ecosystem.
Yep.
So, experience matters, and we try to do everything we can, to share things or give people the tools that can help them accelerate.
All right, we want to zoom out a little bit. There's a lot of discussion right now about the state of the economy. We were talking about with the senator quite a bit. How concerned are you about inflation? How concerned should we be? We've done a lot of surveying with our anonymous survey on Capitol Hill, the Canvas, and Republican staffers seem to be very obsessed and very concerned about inflation, whereas Democratic staffers, not so much.
Well, it's not. I think it's very interesting that you framed it that way. It's not a partisan issue.
It shouldn't be a partisan issue.
It shouldn't be, but
there is inflation in our economy right now. The question is, how long is it going to last? How significant will it be? And what will be the impact of that inflation? The inflation comes from the fact that we have appropriately had very, very loose monetary policy and aggressive fiscal policy. That causes inflation. Irrefutable. The questions are now, what do we do from here? And what are the other factors that we don't know yet, that are unknown and we don't control? And how will that last? And I think, you can have all sorts of debates, and I don't know the answers. Our economists are more constructive on the inflation being more transitory than, some of the most concerned individuals think. Because they see the growth curve really slowing as we head into 2023. I personally think that labor inflation is real and is going to be stickier. I don't think labor inflation is going to be transitory. If you're running a paper mill and you're now paying $22 an hour to get people back into that mill instead of $16 an hour, that is not going backward. That is permanent. It's sticky. It's not going backward. And so I think labor inflation, for a variety of reasons, is going to be stickier. I think there's some demographic issues in that. We've taken, I think, 3 million people out of the workforce who are above 55 because, given the pandemic, they kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to retire. I'm going to work in a different way. That has a real impact on wage pressure as we go forward. The supply chain stuff is really harder to tell. Some of it is really because of the on-off and getting things started, but I think we need to watch this quickly. I think where we go from a monetary and fiscal policy perspective will have an impact. And also, we haven't had inflation for so long. I mean, I grew up in the 1970s. Now, I wasn't a huge financial student in the 1970s, but I was in high school in the 1970s. And, I'll tell you, it's very hard for people, to put themselves back in that mode because we've been in a different mode for a long time. But people forget, Paul Volcker raised interest rates 300 basis points on a Sunday night. It's unclear, and I think it's very important that we're thoughtful about it, but the Fed is very focused on this. And I think they have the tools to manage it appropriately, but we'll have to watch where we go from here.
How much of we're in Washington, so we have to ask this question. We're quickly running out of time. But how much of I imagine a lot of your time is spent thinking about government, thinking about public policy. This initiative is clearly devoted a lot to public policy. Could you talk a little bit about dealing with this administration and how much time you spend doing it and how you feel about it?
Well, my principal job is to run Goldman Sachs.
Right.
And I spend a lot of time on the strategy of Goldman Sachs, the people of Goldman Sachs, and the clients of Goldman Sachs. And that, of course, in that context, we're always thinking about our responsibility to support the communities that we operate in. Of course, policy matters. And so, especially we tend to comment and be very focused on policy where we really have an area of expertise. So economic policy, obviously is the most obvious. Personally, I'm interested in policy. I think policy matters in terms of the economic outcome for all of us, as a society, and not just the economic outcome, but the quality of life, the fabric of our society, all that's rooted in policy. So, we watch with interest. Our focus, obviously, are on the things where we think, based on what we do and the role we play, we can have an impact. But I'm engaged. I think we have a responsibility to be engaged down here, and so I'm down here today, and I'll spend some time engaging.
Engage away.
One last quick question. This administration has talked a lot about raising the corporate tax rate. A lot of companies have been concerned about that. Is there any framework where you think raising the corporate tax rate would be the right policy?
Absolutely. I think we've spent a lot of money, and we're going to have to pay for it. There are a number of tools that we can use. I think we have to be cautious about what we do on the corporate tax rate because we want to make sure we position ourselves competitively. But I certainly don't think that a 21% corporate tax rate is the perfect answer. And I can certainly see a competitive U.S. with a slightly higher corporate tax rate. But, all of this is trade-offs. I think it's important. You can't look at the corporate tax rate without thinking about what's going on with taxes more broadly and how much are we spending.
Right.
But one thing for sure, when you look at how much we've spent and the discussions around how much we are going to spend, the only way we can pay for all that is to drive economic growth. Okay, there's not enough tax to pay for all that. We have to drive economic growth, so we have to make sure we get the policy balances in this correctly set.
All right. With that, we're going to leave you off the hook. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Thank all of you for joining us here in person and on the live stream. We really appreciate Goldman Sachs 10,000 Businesses Voices for its partnership on this three-part series. We will be back after August with our next installment looking at the uneven recovery. We appreciate all of you who joining us. Be safe and get vaccinated. Thank you.
Pro vaccines.
Thank you. Very nice to see
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Nice
it.
to see you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
For having